and I'm here to tell you a Bible story. And today's Bible story, I want to ask you a question first. Have you ever seen anything on the TV or the internet where you really believed it, and then you found out later that it wasn't really true the way you thought? Well, you're going to be seeing a lot of things in this season. I see these little signs. It says, believe, believe. And that's a nice thought, but you got to be careful about what you believe. And so that's what I'm going to tell you a story about today. And the first one is a story from my own family, from one of my grandchildren I call Sweetie. And one time he saw this commercial on the TV, and it showed this candy here called the Gushers. And he saw it, and on the TV commercial, the little kiddo popped a gusher in his mouth, and then his head went all wobbly like it was going to explode, and his eyeballs got all big, and...
Man, what a fruity blast!
I found that commercial on the YouTube. It's very funny. But the little Sweetie said, could I get some of those candies? And of course, I got him some. And so he got his candies. He was so excited, and he ran in the bathroom to look in the mirror, and he popped that candy in his mouth, and he thought that was going to all happen to him. And then he goes, hey, it didn't work. He was upset because he expected what he saw on the TV to happen to him, and it didn't happen. And so you got to be careful what you believe. And I'll tell you another one. It's dangerous sometimes if you believe the wrong thing. Because when I was 5 years old, when I was just in kindergarten, I know that's kind of hard to think of, but I was a long time ago. There was a cartoon called Felix the Cat. And I watched it every day after school. And this cat, he was a little odd because he could walk on his two back legs, and he had a magic bag. And he'd open up his magic bag, and he'd pull out his tricks, and then he'd say certain words, and then he could do things that were amazing. And so I watched it every day, and I kind of got confused. I didn't know it was just a made-up fantasy story. And so one day he pulled out of his magic bag that he could fly. And I thought, I've always wanted to fly. All I need is a magic bag, because now I know the words. So I went to my mama and I said, Mama, can I borrow one of your handbags? And she said, well, sure, kiddo. And of course, she should have asked what I wanted it for, but she didn't. So anyway, I took her little handbag and I went out to our fence. And our fence started out at about 3 feet high, so I could climb up on there even though I was a little girl. And I stood on there and I walked along. I had good balance and I had my little handbag. And I went along, and then the fence went up a step or two, and then as I walked along, and then it went up a step or two, and then it got to where it was high up, like 8 feet high. Like that's like at the roof level. And I thought, good, I'll be able to fly good from here. And so I opened up my magic bag just like Felix the Cat had done, and I said the magic words, and then I just took off because I thought I could fly. And I couldn't fly, and I fell down, and I got hurt real bad, and I ended up in the hospital. And so I want to tell you kiddos, don't just believe everything you see, but there's some things you can believe. When I was a girl, and when I was coming up, if we wanted someone to believe something and really say this is really, really true, we would use a phrase. We'd say, that's the gospel truth. Well, that's not a word we use much anymore, but it's an important word in the Holy Bible. So I want to tell you what it means. The gospel, there's 4 books in the New Testament that are called gospels. Now that word is an old word, and what it meant originally was a story about God, which the gospels have lots of stories about God, and a good story, and it came to mean good news. And so anyway, I want you to know that Grandma Goodie, when I tell you stories, I'm gonna do my very best to just tell you the gospel truth, to tell you the story the way it was said right in the Holy Bible, the way it was written down, so you can be sure of it. But I wanted to explain to you why you can be sure of the Bible and just have a good reason. And that is, I'm going to tell you a quick story about a man by the name of Luke. Now, Luke was a doctor, and he had lived way off, away from the land of Israel in Greece. But he had heard the stories, all these amazing stories, that this man named Jesus Christ had fulfilled all the prophecies that were promised for the Messiah of the Jews. So he wanted to find out if it was true. So he came looking and talking to people, investigating. And when he was in medical school, he learned how to do research real good. And so he came and he collected it up and he wrote it all down. And then he sent it to his friend Theophilus. Now that's a big mouthful of a name. I think I would have called him Theo. But his name Theophilus just means lover of God. And so Luke, he said to his friend Theo, lots of people have written down accounts of what happened that was fulfilled among us, all these events. And he was talking about the events around the life of Jesus. And he said, but I took it upon myself. I decided that I am going to go out and do a careful investigation. That means he's going to check it out. He's going to compare the stories, make sure they match up, and he's going to interview the eyewitnesses, just like you would if you was in a court of law and you wanted to prove something. And so he talked to Mary, the mother of Jesus. He talked to people who were there, who saw the things, who had the things happen to them. And he took all of these stories and then he put them in careful order and he checked them out to make sure they was true before he wrote them down. And then he wrote a letter to his friend Theophilus. And he said, I'm doing this for you because I want you to be certain of the truth of the things you've been taught. And so for you, kiddo, I want you to not feel tricked or like you been told something that wasn't true. I want you to know that the stories that are written in the Holy Bible, especially in the Gospel of Luke, he was a careful investigator. And so that way you can feel comfortable and certain and you can believe. And so I want to close with something you can believe. You believe Grandma Goodie loves you, but God loves you more. Uh-oh, Grandma Goodie forgot to tell you where to find it. Look in the New Testament. The name of the book is Luke, and it's chapter number 1, and it's verses number 1 through 4. So go find it and believe.